Hello, good afternoon. I've got the graveyard slot, 2 p.m. after lunch, so I'm going to try and be energetic. I was asked to give a 10-minute introduction to some of our work the British Council does, and also an overview, a sort of a bird's eye view of what's happening in Europe. But I negotiated, and I've got 13 minutes. So I'm going to keep looking at this. I'm not texting. I'm just watching the time. I'm the head of arts and disability for the British Council in the European Union region. You heard Stina earlier on talking about the Arts Council. And just to clarify, the Arts Council England is one of 4 bodies which fund the arts in the UK. The Arts Council England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Creative Scotland. The British Council does not fund the arts. We are an international cultural relations organisation. So our job is matchmaking organisations and artists around the world with the UK. So I have a fantastic job, actually, because I get to spend my days working in the area of arts and disability with some of the most innovative and exciting artists working in Europe today, full stop. And I get to work with arts funders and governments who are interested in comparing how the structures they put together can, in the long term, influence and change the opportunities for disabled artists and for audiences. And I also get to work in rooms like this full of people who are eager and committed to making change. And it's a really exciting time in Europe to be doing this job because something is happening, and I'll come on to some of that in a moment, but there is something really exciting happening, and this is part of it. So I'm really grateful to be invited to speak today. One of the things I wanted to do was just to explain to you, for the British Council in Europe, in the European Union region, we just do 4 things now. We showcase the very best of UK work overseas. We have a big project around cultural skills and comparing different ways that European cultural sectors train cultural skills. We have a big program around creative economy, supporting entrepreneurs and emerging creators and artisans and artists to build sustainable careers. And we work on arts and disability. So it's one of only 4 things that we do. And of course, disabled artists and the access to the arts fits into everything we do. But we have a very particular focus, which is the area that I lead on, around arts and disability. And that is because we see so much interest across Europe from governments and municipalities who are committed to the arts being much more accessible as for artists and audiences. We see it from the arts sector inspired by the artistic opportunity, and we also see it from the political end, from the individuals, the audiences and the artists demanding that there is greater access. There's a lot of text here, but I just wanted to say we just to be a little bit more clear about exactly what we do in arts and disability. First and key area of our focus is to see more and more disabled artists programmed at the highest level in Europe, in the UK and in Europe, in what we call the mainstream program, so in the non-disability-focused events. It was really interesting hearing that conversation before, and I should say that for us, those disability-focused events, festivals and curated events are hugely important, and I can talk a lot about those, and there's the disability arts movement in the UK is passionate about the importance of them for creating dialogue and for developing a community of artists who can have open, honest, but also generous conversations with each other. But for us, we want to see disabled artists programmed at the highest levels, at the leading festivals, at the leading dance houses across Europe. To support disabled artists as leaders and managers of projects, not just as participants. So I'm really interested at the moment in looking at this question of disabled choreographers, disabled theatre directors, disabled producers, disabled curators, because we believe that is where a shift will take place. To offer unique opportunities for skills and professional development to disabled artists and aspiring artists. And some of that's about breaking down the barriers which exist for disabled artists to take part in skills and professional development. To support organisations to share and learn best practice in making the arts accessible to disabled audiences. So a key area of our work, which I'm not going to focus on too much now. to support international exchange of best practice between arts funders, policymakers, and arts networks. So whether an arts council has a focus for disabled artists, or whether they're encouraging everyone to be part of a larger funding application, all of these make differences in the opportunities for disabled people, and to counter the geographical isolation of disabled artists. Because no matter, we know this from the UK, we have a very strong community of disabled artists, but they have far fewer opportunities for working overseas. So we see it as our job to do something about that. We have two principles that guides all of our work, and you may have heard of these, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating something you know. The social model of disability and the creative case for diversity. And I'm going to give you just a very brief introduction. Social model of disability comes from a UK political perspective, which is an alternative to previous or other models of ways of thinking about disability. So the charity model was the traditional model. So the charity model says disabled people are, it's incredibly unfortunate that they're disabled, they need our support. I don't know if you know, there used to be a word called handicapped that we used to use in the United Kingdom, and it comes from the words cap in hand, literally begging for alms, handicapped. It's one of the reasons we don't use that word anymore. But that charity model, that is one of the models. Another model, another way of thinking about disability is the medical model, that we're very focused on someone's impairment and what doctors and society can do to rectify or to try and make that improve that as much as possible. And then we've got the social model, and the social model says actually it's our society that creates barriers for disabled people. If no one built steps, someone in a wheelchair would not be disabled in that situation. And it forces us all to reflect on the decisions we make, and also the things we know nothing, that we don't realize we're making, and ask ourselves how we can break down barriers. So in the arts, we all know as audiences, access to the arts, or physical access, financial access, cultural assumptions. We talked a little bit about relaxed performances yesterday, but also the fact that the arts are not for me. That idea is terrible in terms of preventing people from accessing the arts. But all of those and more are barriers for disabled artists. So training, we talked a lot about that. Career development, artistic development, residencies, all of those things which there are so many barriers. Showcasing the work, the cost of an additional sign language interpreter. Sometimes it means that the work is more expensive, for example. And networking. I worked with a deaf artistic director recently, and I said, oh, I'm really excited. We've got every speech is captioned, and I've got a sign language interpreter. And she said, yeah, but I just don't want to come for the speeches. I want to come and network. I want to come and sell my shows. And I'm afraid I can't do that. So it's really interesting for us all to be reflecting all the time on what we do or we do unknowingly in terms of that. So that's one idea, social model. Creative case for diversity is a terminology that was introduced, certainly to me, by the Arts Council of England in 2011. It was a way of thinking about diversity more generally, and disability as well, as an artistic opportunity, as a creative opportunity. And it's talking about the artists with unique experiences of the world, often who come not through the traditional conservatoires, the training schools, bring new and unique art which challenges the form, which contributes to a much richer art scene, as we heard earlier on. That diversity is one of the creative opportunities of our time. And actually, for example, in dance, if you're serious as an arts promoter about the body and movement in space, then you should be interested in different bodies, and you really should be interested in different ways that bodies move in space. And if not, and if you're serious about contemporary dance, I'm afraid you're failing. That's a provocation for you. So Stina's point, I've got the same slide as Stina earlier, we should have talked, Stina, is diversity can make the arts richer. So So that's the background of our work, what we're aiming to do. And we do that in a number of ways because it's in partnership with the organizations we work with across Europe and across the world. Sometimes they're small projects. So at the moment in Barcelona with a number of organizations looking at a handful of experienced disabled dancers who have aspirations to become choreographers. What does that journey look like outside of the training organizations? Or a project in Portugal. There used to be one audio describer for theatre and dance in Portugal, and we've been looking we've been training new audio describers for dance and for theatre in Portugal. There's some very small projects. And then a key thing that we've been doing is looking at and working with our really important partners around Europe and saying, well, yeah, they're on the same wavelength as us. We really need to look and take a moment to examine this creative opportunity of that disabled artists offer, the creative case. So IATM, Elena's in the room, but recently we really launched a partnership with IATM, exploring firstly debates around the aesthetics of disability and the contribution it can make and the challenge it can make to form. So Valencia, the IATM, recently was the first of those. And in April this year, we're thinking will be published a publication exploring exactly that. And I think, if Elena, can you just stick your hand up? If someone's got a desire to say something burning about the aesthetics of disability and how that radically challenges form, then speak to Elena. I think we can squeeze in one or two.
Especially if they're not from the UK.
Not from the UK. Not from the what? No, absolutely. Not from the UK. Oh, I shouldn't. Don't hear my boss. Don't let my boss hear me that. Anyway, that was an example of an organisation we have a really strong relationship with, and it's an example of what's taking place in Europe. Tanzmesser last year, a talk that we worked with Tanzmesser on, again around the aesthetics of disability in dance and the opportunity that it brings. You may know Office National de Diffusion Artistique, who are a cultural relations organisation in France. Were recently presenting at Crossing the Line Festival, which was part of a European project with Moonstheater and 3 other European organizations, and bringing French promoters to talk around these questions. So some of our most important and long-standing partners also looking at this area, which is really exciting. Something else we do are the cooperation projects, starting to build a range of organizations who want to work together. This was a project that finished in 2015, NASA's Cultural Center, Center for Movement and Research Croatia, and VOART in Portugal. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more, moving away from the British Council, about some of these other projects taking place, and we have some of the organizations in the room, but Unlabel, Germany, Greece, Turkey, Germany, and Kanduko involved in that one. Really interesting cooperation of organizations committed. The Humane Body is a really interesting project. It's ongoing at the moment, which is about artistic responses to audio description of dance. So not only exploring what audio description is, but asking artists to respond and create integrated audio description. So that's with serious dance organizations. Really interesting there. We've already heard about moving beyond inclusion, but again, I think it's really interesting where Sweden fits in with a number of these. I mentioned Crossing the Line with Moonstheater. We've got Moving Beyond Inclusion, and some of you were here just to watch the film a little while ago. I dance, and I missed the first session yesterday, so I don't know, Tanya, whether you got to talk a little bit about it. And I was surprised you didn't, because it's so fantastic, this exploration of innovative practices in inclusive dance education. So 4 partners, including Skånes. A really interesting project, which we hope will have exciting opportunities for curricula and for learnings that we can all share beyond those 4 organizations. I put this up here. It's a bit of a risk. It's a project that isn't yet funded by Creative Europe, but I wanted to just, again, to indicate the type of organisation that are just excited by the creative opportunities. So here are 8 organisations, large organisations, committed to a 4-year programme to transform the way that we work with disabled artists, but also to present the very best work, to commission the very best work, but also to develop toolkits and tools that can be shared with literally with thousands of arts professionals across Europe. So Mercat de la Flor, Skånes, De Veranda in Belgium, Holland Dance, Kampnagel, Germany's largest independent theatre organisation, Pair Art Serbia. So working with really key organisations who are saying, we're not the experts, but we want to go on a journey over 4 years. And I just wanted to share this. So on the right-hand side, you can see a list of organisations have already signed up to disseminate. So people like IETM, people like ISPA or ONDA, with Ukraine, with massive reach. So I think these are just examples of what's going on in Europe in terms of the seriousness with which arts organisations are taking it, and of course EDN's commitment here indicates that as well. Last thing. 1 minute. Last thing I'm going to introduce to you, just with that, my last point about one of our aims was to counter this geographical isolation of disabled artists. And Disability Arts International is a website that we run, and newsletter and social media, which tries to draw together some of these conversations, sending journalists to some of the key conferences like this, reporting back so that we can share and understand a bit more what's going on in Europe. So information about access for audiences, but also what's going on for artists. One of the key things that we have on there are profiles. Artists and companies, any self-defining professional disabled artist or company can create a profile there to have their work seen. And I would like to encourage you to sign up or spread the word. I just stuck this at the top of my Twitter this morning, so if you go to @disartsint, you can retweet my Swedish version to try and gather more people. So we're in the middle of a social media campaign to gather people from across Europe to sign them up. And talking about a little bit before about are we ghettoizing the work, or are we trying to create it inclusive in the mainstream? As Stina said, I think it's both. So for us as the British Council, for those excellent companies like Can Do Co and many others, we will promote them through our theatre and dance programme, for example. They will be presented at our Edinburgh Showcase, a choice of 30 best productions where we present them to international promoters. But we recognise that there are additional barriers that disabled artists face, and we will do a separate programme in addition to help counter those. So that's our response to some of the challenges, but we're only starting the journey. So we're really open to discussions with organisations large and small, so do come and talk to us. There we are.